In our fast-paced, goal-oriented world, we are conditioned to value one thing above all else: the straight line. It is the symbol of efficiency, of logic, of getting from point A to point B as quickly as possible. We apply this thinking to everything, including our own inner lives. We search for the direct path to happiness, the 7 steps to healing, the quick fix for our suffering. We believe the journey of self-discovery should be a linear ascent, a ladder we climb to a final destination. But what if the soul does not travel in a straight line? The great Swiss psychiatrist Carl Jung observed that the psyche has its own, very different geometry. Its natural path is not a line, but a spiral. He used a powerful ancient term to describe this process: circumambulation. This is the sacred act of walking around a central point. Today we will explore this profound concept. We will learn why the path to wholeness is not a direct assault on a summit, but a patient, winding, and lifelong journey around the sacred center of your own being. This is a journey to unlearn the tyranny of the straight line and to embrace the wisdom of the spiral. The word circumambulation comes from the Latin circum, meaning around, and ambulare, to walk. It is a ritual that has been practiced by humanity for millennia. We see it in the pilgrims circling the sacred Kaaba in Mecca, in Buddhist monks walking meditatively around a stupa, and in the ancient Celts walking in circles around sacred stones. In every tradition, the meaning is the same. There is a sacred center, a point of divine power that is so holy it cannot be approached directly. One must instead circle it with reverence, absorbing its energy and aligning oneself with its power from all sides. Jung saw this ancient ritual as a perfect metaphor for the psychological process of individuation. For him, the sacred center is the self, the archetype of wholeness, the divine core of our personality. The ego, our small, conscious center of identity, cannot simply decide to reach the self. The self is not a goal to be conquered or a prize to be won. Any direct attempt by the ego to grasp the self is an act of inflation, of spiritual pride. The ego would simply be trying to make the vast, mysterious self a part of its own small, known world. Therefore, the only way to approach the self is through circumambulation. It is the process of patiently and respectfully walking the circular path around this sacred center, getting to know it from every possible angle, slowly and deliberately. Why is a direct approach to the self impossible and even dangerous? Because the self, the total personality, contains everything. Not just the light, but the immense, powerful darkness of the unconscious. The ego, by its nature, is a small, fragile boat sailing on a vast and powerful ocean. To try and sail directly into the heart of the ocean's greatest storm, the center of all psychic energy, would be an act of suicide. The boat would be shattered. This is why the path must be indirect. The journey of circumambulation ensures that the ego does not encounter more of the unconscious than it can handle at any one time. It is a gradual, spiraling process of assimilation. You don't conquer the unconscious. You learn to build a relationship with it. You learn its language, respect its power, and slowly integrate small pieces of it into your conscious awareness. The ego that tries to achieve enlightenment directly is like a would-be king who tries to storm the castle of a god. He will be repelled. But the ego that chooses the path of the pilgrim, that humbly agrees to walk the long, winding path around the sacred mountain, will be slowly transformed by the journey. The goal is not to conquer the center, but to be in a constant, respectful, and dynamic relationship with it, like a planet in a stable orbit around its life-giving sun. This indirect path is the only one that ensures both safety and true, lasting transformation. The great journey of circumambulation begins at the outermost edge of the circle, in the most remote and neglected territories of our own psyche. And what do we find in these outer rings? We find the shadow. Before we can even begin to approach the divine light of the self at the center, we must first turn and face the darkness we have cast behind us. As we take our first steps on the spiral path, we are immediately confronted with all the parts of ourselves that we have disowned, repressed, and projected onto others. We encounter our hidden anger, our secret envy, our repressed fears, our judgments. The path leads us directly through the swamp of our own denied darkness. This is why so many people abandon the inner journey at the very beginning. It is uncomfortable and humbling. We want to walk towards the light, but the path forces us to first spend a long time walking through our own shadowlands. Each time we successfully confront and integrate a piece of our shadow, by withdrawing a projection, by owning a difficult feeling, by forgiving ourselves for an imperfection, we complete one loop of the spiral. We have walked around the center one full time, and this act of integration strengthens the ego, making it ready for the next, deeper layer of the journey. The path to the light of the self inexplicably leads through the darkness of the shadow. We must first know the full circumference of our being before we can begin to spiral closer to its sacred center. As we continue on our spiral path, having begun the difficult work of integrating the shadow, we move to a new layer of the psyche. Here we encounter the next great archetypal figures we must relate to: the anima and the animus. These are the inner, unconscious soul images, the inner feminine in a man and the inner masculine in a woman. Just as we had to confront the darkness we projected onto our enemies, we must now confront the idealized light we project onto our lovers. The path of circumambulation forces us to examine our relationships. It makes us see how we have turned our partners into gods and goddesses, asking them to carry the undeveloped parts of our own soul. On this part of the journey, we must perform the difficult work of withdrawing these projections. A man must stop seeking his soul in the outer world and begin to cultivate his own anima, his capacity for feeling, creativity, and relatedness. A woman must stop seeking her authority and direction in an outer partner and begin to develop her own animus, her capacity for logic, assertion, and clarity. Each time we take back a piece of our projected soul, we make another loop on the spiral. We come closer to the center. The journey around the self is not a solitary one. It is a path that requires us to understand and integrate these powerful inner figures of the opposite sex, transforming our relationships from unconscious, neurotic bonds into conscious partnerships. The path to the center is also the path to true, mature love. One of the most confusing and ultimately liberating aspects of circumambulation is the experience of revisiting old ground. As you walk the spiral path, you will find yourself circling back to the same issues, the same core wounds, the same complexes, again and again throughout your life. You may think you have solved your issues with authority, only to find them appearing again in a new job. You may believe you have healed your fear of abandonment, only to have it triggered in a new relationship. From the perspective of a linear path, this feels like utter failure. I'm back where I started, we cry in despair. But from the perspective of the spiral, this is not failure. It is the very nature of the path. You are not back in the same place. You are encountering the same landmark on the sacred mountain, but from a higher altitude and with a new perspective. The first time you encountered your fear of failure, you were at the base of the mountain, and it looked like an impassable cliff. Years later, you encounter it again, but now you are halfway up the spiral. You have more wisdom, more tools, more consciousness. The cliff now looks like a manageable rock face. You see it with new eyes. You are able to integrate another deeper layer of it. This is the profound wisdom of the spiral. It gives us multiple opportunities to engage with our deepest material. It understands that healing is not a one-time event. The psyche patiently brings us back to our core issues again and again until we have seen them from all sides and have integrated their lessons into the wholeness of our being. How does one practically walk this inner path? The steps of circumambulation are taken through the conscious and consistent practice of ritual and reflection. These practices are what turn an unconscious process into a conscious journey. The most important ritual is the honoring of dreams. Your dreams are the most direct communication from the self, showing you where you are on the path and what you need to pay attention to. Keeping a dream journal is like keeping a logbook of your soul's pilgrimage. Another footstep on the path is journaling. Writing down your thoughts, feelings, and reflections creates the alchemical vessel we've spoken of before. It is a sacred container where you can safely engage with the difficult opposites and chaotic feelings that arise on the journey. It is a way of making the inner world tangible and visible. Active imagination, the method Jung himself used, is a more advanced form of this work. It is the ritual of directly dialoguing with the figures of your unconscious, a conscious and courageous conversation with the gods and demons of your inner world. And for many, therapy, especially depth-oriented therapy, provides the ultimate container. A good therapist acts as a guide and a witness, a fellow traveler who can hold the space for you to safely navigate the difficult turns on your spiral path. These practices are the rituals that define the pilgrim. They are the conscious commitment to walking the path, to paying attention, to listening to the whispers of the self, and to honoring the profound mystery of the journey around the center. What keeps us on this long and often difficult path? What prevents us from simply wandering off into the wilderness? Jung's answer would be the gravity of the self. Just as the sun's immense gravity keeps the planets in a stable, predictable orbit, the self, the center of our psychic solar system, exerts a powerful, ordering influence on our conscious ego. The self wants to be known. The psyche wants to be whole. This is its innate, natural tendency. The call to individuation, the pull towards the center, is the most powerful force in our inner lives. When we are young, the ego is far from the center, and its orbit can be erratic and chaotic. But as we engage in the work of circumambulation, as we walk the spiral path, we get closer to the center. And the closer we get, the stronger its gravitational pull becomes. Its guidance becomes clearer. Its wisdom becomes more accessible. This is why people who are engaged in deep inner work often feel a sense of being guided or held by a force greater than their own ego. They are feeling the gravity of the self. They make a mistake that turns out to be a life-changing opportunity. They have a chance encounter that opens up a new world. These are the synchronicities, the meaningful coincidences that signal we are in a correct orbit around the center. The journey is long, but we are not walking alone or without a compass. We are held in a powerful, invisible orbit by the very center we are seeking. What does it feel like to live a life of circumambulation? It is a life of ever-increasing consciousness and perspective. As you continue to spiral around the mountain of the self, your view of the landscape of your own life becomes wider and deeper. You begin to see the connections between seemingly random events. You understand how a childhood wound led to a specific relationship pattern, which in turn led to a crisis that forced you to develop a new strength. You see your life not as a series of accidents, but as a meaningful, interconnected tapestry. You develop a high tolerance for paradox and ambiguity. You no longer need the world to be simple, black and white. You can hold the tension of the opposites within yourself. You can be both strong and vulnerable, both spiritual and grounded, both joyful and acquainted with sorrow. You become a living embodiment of wholeness, not perfection. You also develop a profound sense of trust in the process. You no longer panic when an old issue resurfaces or when you feel lost or confused. You recognize it as simply a new turn in the spiral. You have been here before, from a different angle, and you trust that your psyche is leading you where you need to go. Life is no longer a problem to be solved, but a mystery to be lived. You are no longer trying to conquer the mountain. You are simply focused on walking the path with as much awareness, courage, and reverence as you can muster for the sacred journey itself. In the end, the metaphor of circumambulation offers a profound sense of liberation. It frees us from the tyranny of the destination, the modern obsession with arriving at a final, perfect, and static state. It teaches us that the goal of a conscious life is not to stop walking. The goal is the walk itself. The meaning of your life is not found at the center of the labyrinth. It is found in the courage it takes to walk its winding paths, to face its dead ends, and to trust the journey. The wholeness you seek is not a treasure to be found at the end of the quest. It is forged in the very act of questing. To embrace the spiral path is to embrace the true nature of life itself, a dynamic, unfolding, and ever-deepening process of becoming. It is to find peace not in certainty, but in mystery. It is to find joy not in achievement, but in the process. It is to accept that you will always be a pilgrim, walking in the sacred circles around the profound, unknowable, and divine mystery that is the center of your own soul. The path does not end, and that is the most beautiful and liberating truth of all.